Well, this is a very extensive case. It involves multiple victims. So the amount of evidence collection will be voluminous and it will be extensive because the investigation will be extensive.
Bryan Kohberger's defense team is bombarded with thousands of pieces of evidence just 6 weeks before he's due back in court for a preliminary hearing. It's the first time the accused murderer will appear in court since early January.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died.
On November 13th of last year, 4 University of Idaho students were found stabbed to death in their off-campus home. For weeks, police in Moscow, Idaho kept tight-lipped about the case, releasing few details with the exception of a vehicle of interest, a white Hyundai Elantra.
We are confident that the occupant or occupants of that vehicle have information that's critical to this investigation.
Officials later connected that vehicle to Kohberger, who at the time of the murders was studying at Washington State University, only about 10 minutes from the University of Idaho.
Finds probable cause, you would be bound over to district court. And at that time, you can enter a plea of not guilty, and you can have a jury trial set within 6 months of your appearance in district court.
Kohberger was arrested in late December at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. Investigators used trash recovered from his family home to link Kohberger to DNA recovered on a knife sheath found at the crime scene. At a press conference post-arrest, Pennsylvania authorities touched on what evidence was recovered at his parents' home.
You have the right to the presumption of innocence. That means the state bears the burden to prove that you are guilty of this offense.
After a court appearance in Monroe County, Pennsylvania in early January, Kohberger was extradited back to Idaho. Since then, he's been held in the Latah County, Idaho jail, about 1 mile from the crime scene. His defense now receiving a plethora of evidence from the prosecution ahead of his coming court date.
Not only will they have to investigate the totality of the crime and provide that information, but they will also have to investigate each victim individually, along with each defendant, along with everyone that they interviewed. So everything has to be compacted into a case, but it is a lot of evidence. And 10,000 is actually a lot, but not that much.
Law enforcement instructor Sonny Slaughter tells Law&Crime Network the amount of evidence Kohberger's defense recently received may seem like a lot, but it's relatively normal. After multiple motions by the defense, the prosecution handed over 10,000 pages of reports and other written material, more than 10,000 photographs, 9,200 tips, and 51 terabytes of audio and video.
When you think about the evidence, so they're looking at the crime scene and they have all of the photos from the crime scene. So in the crime scene tech is taking a lot of photos and then cataloging all of that evidence. And then they are having to go back through. There's a huge digital footprint that was used in this case. So they have to go and categorize and review every piece of the digital footprint that they gathered from Bryan's and from each victim and from people that they interviewed and from all of the cameras. And there are multiple states and law enforcement agencies, so all of that information is necessary.
Kohberger's defense specifically narrowed in on information from his arrest in Pennsylvania, requesting body and dash camera video.
They are looking to see, or according to what they're stating, there is something in the body cam footage and the dash cam footage where he may have been taken into the car and he was talking or they were talking, and that would be rolling information that they want to look at. So apparently they've heard something, or Bryan has indicated himself that something was said during that incident, which requires them to really take a look at it.
But according to newly released court documents, there may not be any Pennsylvania body or dash cam recordings at all. The documents read in part, quote, "The state has disclosed all items it is aware of relating to the search and arrest of Bryan Kohberger in Pennsylvania. The state is unaware of any body cam and dash cam footage beyond what has been disclosed. Even still, Slaughter says information from Kohberger's Pennsylvania arrest should be important to his defense team.
And each state and each jurisdiction is going to look different. So you need to know what those laws look like to ensure that law enforcement follow the proper procedure. And then there was evidence that they collected at the scene along with the investigation on the family members and the neighbor. So any camera footage, any pictures that they were taking, that's really going to be crucial. And because it's in multiple jurisdictions, they really need to look at the evidence.
After Kohberger's arrest, Pennsylvania authorities said they will cooperate with Idaho investigators.
Moscow with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder in violation of Idaho Code 18-1401 and 1403. The maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is not less than 1 year in prison, no more than 10 years in prison, and or a $50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the
According to Slaughter, that means we could see Pennsylvania authorities testify at Kohberger's preliminary hearing next month or eventual trial.
I would expect that to happen because they are the arresting team executing a separate search warrant than what happened at the actual murder scene. So I would suspect that the defense would call those individuals and would question their records, their training records, what they did, how they did it, whether they followed proper procedure. And you're looking at, on the defense side, at the smallest change in normal processes.
Slaughter also expects Kohberger's defense team to do their due diligence in investigating first responders.
What the defense would want to look at is the police records, the training records of the individuals that might be called to the stand to determine whether they had proper training, how long their training was. They want to look at their records to see, if they've had anything in the past that might eliminate them from being called to testify, what that might look like, and how recent is their training? What are they doing? Did they have the right training to execute a search warrant? How long were they a part of the team? How many training hours? Are they up on their firearms training? All of those things, every nuance that could potentially matter in a case really does matter.
She says it's up to Kohberger's team to find exculpatory evidence, or evidence that would prove the defendant is not guilty or suggest that someone else is responsible for the crime. But having only 6 weeks to review thousands of documents could be a tight turnaround.
Are you waiving your right to a speedy preliminary hearing and agreeing that that hearing can be held outside the 14-day period?
Yes.
Kohberger already waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing, meaning we could see the defense request an extension to the coming hearing.
I would have thought that they would have been getting information prior to now. It's a very short window. And as someone who has served as an expert before on a case, it takes an extensive amount of time to go through something. You have to find the experts that you need based on what you're looking at. And then you need to make sure those experts are qualified, and the experts have to review it. Then they have to actually compile a report that you have to review that has to then go to the other side and to the judge to see if that person can even provide that information. So it's an extensive process, and I would expect that they might try to form some type of delay.
This comes as investigators reveal a list of items recovered from Kohberger's Washington apartment post-arrest. Among the items collected, an Amazon Fire Stick, a computer tower, and hair strands. Chemical tests performed on more than 60 hairs came back positive for blood after preliminary testing. But Slaughter says there's no reason to rush to judgment about those test results.
That there was some type of blood that was identified related to the evidence that they found. However, the presence of blood can happen with any of us. We shave, we do our hair, we have accidents at home. So it doesn't mean that it is conducive for the victims. But it could just be conducive for him, for that individual or someone else that he may have been in contact with, where, blood is not, we have to always be careful I try to temper people's responses in the public down when they see something. Until we know, we don't know. It's just a guess. So until they say that it belongs to one individual at the crime scene, then, it's just blood.
Meanwhile, as Kohberger is held in the Latah County Jail, reports say he's received a flurry of letters, some with hearts and stars drawn on the envelopes. Slaughter says it's not uncommon for defendants to receive this type of fan mail.
And the higher profile an inmate is, the more they tend to receive. Even Alex Murdaugh is receiving love letters. So there are individuals who gravitate towards these type of alleged or convicted murderers. They think it's sexy, and it is very disturbing that there are women in particular tend to do this. I don't know how much men do this, but women tend to feel the need to be close to these individuals and to show them some type of affection. They send all kinds of things in the mail, and it is disturbing that people don't either believe in the justice system or they believe that they're somehow immune from the type of violence that the victims may have experienced. And that's painful.
Slaughter points out that while the case has gained national attention, it's important to remember real families are affected by the tragedy.
The public has an identity with this case, but I want them to remember that there are victims, families, who are intricately involved in every aspect of this, and to be mindful of how we cover it, how people view it. These are people's lives that are forever changed, their siblings, their families, their friends, and an entire community. So we should all want justice to prevail more for the victims than for our own gratification and understanding.
Right now, the preliminary hearing is expected to begin on June 26th and will last multiple days. Slaughter says it makes sense for a lengthy preliminary hearing based on the nature of this case. Reporting for Law&Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.